Thank you very much. I'm going to show a lot of pictures. So Eleanor asked me to frame this discussion by looking at some history, which I'm delighted to do. It turned out to be quite a difficult task because both IB and business history have surprisingly little to say about the environment and sustainability. And I pondered that, and Lorraine reminded me of an article she'd written in Jibs with Stephanie Lenway about the Janus side of globalization 10 years ago, which talked about the reluctance of the IB community to talk about the dark side of multinationals. And perhaps we have some clue there to why we haven't said much about it. Let me attempt to. There is a very dark side. Over the last 150, 200 years, industrial capitalism, globalization, and multinationals have, I think, been at the center of polluting the earth, of the destruction of the environment. If you look at the long reach of human history, humans developed over time by harnessing energy. Sun, wind, animal. In 18th century Europe, 2/3 of all energy came from animals. Then in the Industrial Revolution, organic energy was replaced by mineral energy. Coal and then oil. We became ever more richer, ever more wealthy, and the planet started on the way of pollution. As we got richer, multinationals and companies increasingly changed our environment. That's a tea plantation in India. India started the 19th century as one of the great manufacturing countries in the world, along with China. It ended it as a producer of tea. British multinationals went to India and turned it into a giant tea plantation because as Western people got richer, they wanted more tea, more foods, more minerals. That's Central America. In the late 19th century, American banana companies, which eventually became United Fruit or Chiquita, went to Central America and started planting bananas. They turned places like that into places like that. And the result was that banana became the most traded, the most consumed fruit in the world. It still is. But for the people of Central America, those lands were devastated. Their lives were devastated. The banana brought pollution, corruption, and much else. That's Chile. That's Atacama Desert in Chile. That's where the Guggenheim mining multinational left what it left when the nitrate boom collapsed in the 1930s and they no longer wanted to explore nitrates. It's still sitting there. It's a World Heritage site now. Mining devastated large parts of the environment, and multinationals, globalization, were at the center of that. As the 20th century developed, so manufacturing companies went global. Heinz is up there, selling branded products, which increasingly created huge problems of waste. Ford in the 1920s went global, building a huge global multinational car business, taking pollution around the world. After the Second World War, science was increasingly used to make products stronger. In detergents, in washing clothes, companies like Procter & Gamble and Unilever added phosphates and other chemicals to create strong detergents. The bad news was the detergents killed lakes, and that's a dead lake in the 1970s, caused by detergents going into the water. By now you might think I'm one of these anti-globalization crazes, and perhaps I am. But that's not really my point. My point is that historically, multinationals have been at the center of the environmental problems that we face now. So why has that been the case? Well, a few companies were wicked. Chiquita, or United Fruit, was a wicked company which overthrew governments and didn't care for its people. Later on, Enron was a criminal company and did great damage. But for the most part, that's not the story. In fact, we know from very good research on pollution havens that multinationals generally haven't sought to put polluting activities in poorer countries or countries with weaker regulation. In fact, if anything, they will invest in marginally better environmental technologies. Basically, it's a story of ignorance, of really not knowing about environmental damage in many ways. But ignorance itself is a relative term. If you look over the last 40 or 50 years, what you see is that sustainability or greenness, what we mean by that, has changed quite dramatically. Take an example of cosmetics. That's Nita Roddick, the founder of The Body Shop, a British company that founded in the 70s, went global in the 80s and 90s, was bought by L'Oreal 4 years ago. When Roddick starts her business, she's interested in cheaper packaging to stop the pollution of packaging. She's interested in sort of environmentally friendly products. She's interested in a less sexist treatment of women. Over time, greenness came to mean no animal testing, recycling, supporting NGOs. The concept of greenness kept changing, and it keeps changing. And in cosmetics, we don't really know what a green cosmetic is, or a natural cosmetic. If you imagine if all cosmetics were natural, for example, then most of the planet would be covered with plants to grow cosmetics, which can't possibly be called environmentally friendly. What is sustainability? It's the same story in energy. In the 1960s, some countries, Japan, France, Sweden, decided that nuclear energy was a sustainable form of energy. Other countries, like Denmark, decided it wasn't a sustainable form of energy. And the problem here is it's both. It's less damaging than fossil fuels. It's also extremely difficult to dispose of the waste, in fact impossible. And also, when it blows up, it's extremely destructive and dangerous. Most people would claim that wind energy is sustainable, is more sustainable. But wind energy kills birds, it creates huge noise, and most of all, it's been promoted over most of the world by distorted tariff regimes pursued to enhance corporate profit or in pursuit of industrial policy rather than for environmental needs. The fact that greenness, sustainability, is in many ways a social construct makes it hard for multinationals to pursue sustainable policies, because what they are, it makes them very easy to greenwash themselves, claiming to be green, whatever that means. That said, pollution, destruction of the environment is real. And in a world where corporate governments and states mostly fail, are mostly incompetent, mostly can't be trusted, I say that the multinationals have a key role as our last best hope to sustain the environment. Multinationals can make a big difference, and there are some historical examples where they have made a difference. Take the case of Suzlon, the Indian wind energy company founded in the 1990s, which is now in the top 10 of multinationals in this sector. So Islam is driven by a very, very clear vision about what the problems are. If Indians start consuming power like Americans, the world will run out of resources. Either you stop India developing, or you find alternative solutions. He's a guy with a vision which he's implementing. And he's using the power of a multinational enterprise to do that, to drive innovation and transfer innovation around. Take the case of Natura. Natura is Brazil's biggest beauty company, cosmetics company, $1 billion revenues, multinational business in Latin America and spreading elsewhere. Natura was founded 30 or 40 years ago, and its founders have persistently followed a policy of supporting biodiversity, environmental sustainability, help to the indigenous peoples. Look what the co-founder says. We can't just take the world's natural resources and put it in nice packaging. That's old-fashioned global products. We have to extract raw material economically feasibly, environmentally correctly, and socially just. Natura, as any Brazilians will tell you, is a company that walks the talk. They do exactly what they say. And this guy was the vice presidential candidate in the last Brazilian election for the Green Party. And it's a highly successful multinational. In my view, the most interesting examples of pioneering multinationals have come from emerging markets over the last 20 or 30 years. That's where the new ideas are. That's where people understand the future rather than the old-fashioned way. Nevertheless, there are some old-fashioned companies which have shown the way. Take the case of Unilever, perhaps almost the world's oldest multinational. That's the first UN conference on the environment in Stockholm, in Sweden, 1972. People have been talking about the environmental crisis for 40 years. Why is that there? Unilever provided a lot of the facilities for that conference. It was an active actor. Unilever has continued to be an active actor. In 1997, it founded the World Stewardship Council with the World Wildlife Fund to preserve, or try to preserve, fish stock and prevent overfishing. And Unilever has done a series of things, an increasing series of things, to use its power as a giant multinational to try and save the planet. In the big picture, then, my view is multinationals and globalization have been central actors in the destruction of our environment. Some have also shown that they can be central actors in the solution to our environmental problems. And for the IB community, my view is that the challenges of the environment that we all live in is now the greatest challenge facing humanity. And for the IB community, I think we should be having the impact of multinationals, the role of multinationals in the environment, as really central to our research agendas, rather than something that just occasionally we think is an important topic to discuss. Thanks a lot.